and inspiration to me, just to hear from the beginning when we started, we've prayed for people's hearts to open up to refugees. And your hearts have opened up. And so you all are an answer to our prayers. It's been awesome to get to know Levi both through the miracle of technology. I mean, living in Thailand, he's in Idaho, and we get to know each other, we're able to fellowship, and then also staying here with him and Clary, you have a gem. So to start, I just want to share sort of my story and the story of LifeRaft. And it all started about 7 years ago when I was a senior at Baylor University in Texas. And I was just wandering around my academic building on campus, and I saw a flyer, and it said it wanted English teachers in Thailand. Now, at the time, I knew that Thailand was in Southeast Asia, but if you'd shown me a map, I wouldn't have been able to tell you which one was Cambodia or Vietnam or Indonesia. It all was one kind of area, kind of near China for me. But on my heart, I'd been wanting to seek something different. I wanted to go abroad. And so I jumped at the chance. They were foolish enough to hire me. And I graduated on a Saturday, and 2 days later I was on a plane to Thailand. I found out after I got there that I would be teaching phonics to second grade girls. And on the drive over, as my boss was telling me this, I looked over to him and I was like, can you remind me what phonics is? So teaching second grade girls phonics in Thailand is a whole nother story, but I think what's relevant today is that decision that I made to go there. And a lot of that actually, I think the motivation for that came from a verse in Matthew 25, and it's Matthew 25:31, and I'm going to read it today because it's a really powerful and inspiring verse for me. And to set the context, this, in Matthew, this is the last story that Matthew tells of Jesus' words before it shifts to the betrayal of Jesus. So it's kind of a cool insight. Like, what was the last thing that Jesus was leaving with his followers, with his listeners, before the story shifts to his betrayal? And so, starting in verse 31, he says, "But when the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate them one from another, as the shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will put the sheep on his right and the goats on the left. Then the king will say to those on his right, 'Come, you who are blessed of my Father. Inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. Naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me.' Then the righteous will answer him, 'Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? And when did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or naked and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and come to you?' And the king will answer and say to them, 'Truly I say to you, to the extent that you did it to one of these brothers of mine, even the least of them, you did it to me.'" And so, living in Texas, there are opportunities to minister to the least of these here in the U.S., but there was something in my heart that said sometimes those opportunities are enhanced and bigger elsewhere. And so when I heard Thailand, I felt that, I sensed that by going there, God would give me the opportunity to minister to the least of those. And that happened while I was sitting in, this is about 7 years ago, a few months after I got to Thailand. I was sitting in my church, and a family of people, so Thailand, they're Asian, so they look Chinese, so the church was a mixture of Asians and white people, mainly. And one day a family walked in who looked different from us. And so I kind of asked them, I got to know them, and I found out that they were refugees from Sri Lanka. And so I got to know them, and they were a really just an awesome family. They developed authentic relationships at our church. They sought ways to serve, and they never asked for anything. One day, they invited me into their home, and their home was a studio apartment. It was four, so one of them was named Shanta, his wife, his infant daughter, and his mother were all there. And their home was about from like this side of the stage to that wall. So that was their whole, also that was their room. And so they had all that, they didn't have room for a table or chairs. It was just the bed. So I was there, and they gave me the seat of honor on the bed while they sat on the floor. And they made me this delicious South Asian meal, and they gave me food, and they sat on the floor and watched me eat. And they would not eat anything until they were confident that I was full. And a little while later, I found out that in order to pay for one more month of rent at this apartment, that Shanta and his wife were going to pawn off their wedding rings. And something inside me broke when I heard that. And there's a verse in 1 John 3:16 through 17, it says, "For we know love by this, that he laid down his life for us. And so we also should lay down our lives for our brothers. But whoever sees his brother in need and has the world's goods and closes his heart to him, how can he say the love of God abides in him?" And I looked at myself, and I looked at our church, and I was like, this is pretty clear. Like, our brother is in need, and we have the world's goods. Like, we have got to help him. And we did. And about a year later, Shanta and his wife and his family were on a plane to the Netherlands, and they still had their wedding rings. And so I was actually by the time they headed back to the Netherlands, I found out about this sitting in front of a computer in Argentina. And so it's not as exotic as it sounds. At the time, I was at a computer because where I was living didn't have any internet, so it was an hour commute into town to have access to the internet. I was living in a room without electricity or any kind of temperature control with 9 other guys. At this place to live, in order to take a shower, I had to hike about 15 minutes. And then if I wanted a hot shower, which is nice when it's like 30 or 40 degrees outside and the shower's not heated, I had to start a fire underneath the hot water container and wait for the hot water to heat up and hope it wasn't too hot so I didn't boil from the shower. And this was all cheaper than like a semester of college, not surprisingly based on the amenities, I guess. But I recommend it. It was an awesome experience for me. So anyways, this is towards the end of my time, and I was finding out about it, and I came back home, and I was talking to my friend Mike, who had really spearheaded our efforts to help Shant and his family. And he told me that, and we were talking on Skype again, like this miracles of technology, and he said that ability to impact someone's life, his ability to make that kind of difference for Shanta and his wife, that had inspired them to seek out more refugees. They said, we want to be able to have this kind of life-changing impact on more people. And I just I was hearing that was so exciting for me. So it was like, not only did we help one family, but like we're going further. Like this is starting, this feels almost like a movement. And so I nothing came to me at the time. It was just like embracing like how exciting this was. And so one day I was out doing yard work, and this idea, and I feel like this was a revelation came to me, and it was like, what if we created a process to enable more people to help refugees and to enable people in the U.S. to also make this kind of life-changing impact on people's lives. And then specifically, this idea came as I was thinking about Sean's, and like what made the difference for his family was that he made friends and that people took a personal interest in him. It wasn't some like large like bureaucratic organization, or that they'd fulfill the requirements of some church, like of like a church like administrative requirements. It was he made friends. And not only did he have his needs met, but he had that in the context of a relationship, in the context of brothers, of people he knew loving him. And I was like, let's keep doing that. So let's help more refugees in Thailand. And at the time, I had no idea how many there would be. I think at the time there were about 2,000 refugees in Thailand, and we knew 10 or 20 probably total. As my friend Mike was seeking, that was kind of met a couple more families. But like, let's do that in the context of relationships with other Christians in Thailand, and the idea of empowering Christians in Thailand to love their brothers, and so that was there's another really it was a Matthew, to me it was like that was like a Matthew 25 opportunity, right, to provide food, to provide to quench their thirst, to invite the stranger in, and so that was the beginning, right? I had studied psychology at Baylor. I had been an English teacher in Thailand. I'd just been like a missionary in South America for like 5 months, and I was back and about to go to law school. So, and as I went into law school, this was still just an idea. So for like the first year, like we kind of met some requirements. For the first year, I raised like $500 to pay for the requirement to get 501c3 status, and my mom had started donating to our organization. I hadn't convinced my dad yet. And so I was in California doing some legal work to continue my career as a lawyer, and my church got in touch with me, and they said, we want to make this happen. Like, we want to really help refugees in Thailand, and so we are going to send you back for a couple weeks, so you can really be on the ground and explore what this is going to look like. So at the time, I wasn't even, like, I thought, like, I want to focus on finding more partners on the state side before I go back, because it's a lot of money to go from the US to Thailand, but they said, you need to go. And so I said, okay. And when I went back, I found out how much the situation had changed. It had gone from being about 2,000 refugees from a variety of different countries to all of a sudden being over 8,000 refugees, and the majority of those being Pakistani Christians, and at the time 500 new refugees were coming in each month. And I found out the UNHCR, which was the reason refugees were coming, because they hoped to come to Thailand and have the UNHCR help them get to a new country. The UNHCR was overwhelmed, and refugees there, they come and they were hoping that, hey, within a year I can hopefully go to America or the Netherlands or somewhere where I can practice my faith in freedom. But that was processed. The UN was saying, no, it's not going to take a year anymore. If we choose you, it's going to take at least 5 years, maybe 10 years. And refugees are coming on 60-day tourist visas. And as soon as that visa expires, immigration police are actively hunting them down, and they'll take entire families, including kids, and throw them in an inhumane, really terrible prison. And so refugees faced with this crisis, fathers faced with this idea that even inside my studio apartment with my 5 or 6 family members, any knock on the door could mean my entire family is in jail for years. And they don't speak the language, they aren't able to work, and they're also adapting to cultures. And so faced with this burden, this menace, this kind of escaping persecution for being Christians in Pakistan, but then really being persecuted for their immigration status in Thailand, they flocked to churches in Thailand. And one church in particular I was able to connect with at this time. And they were, at the time they had a feeding program for feeding almost 500 refugees. But as I spoke with them, they were feeling really, really overwhelmed. So they said, like, we want to help our brothers in Christ, like people who've experienced persecution, but we're on the verge of shifting from being a church to being a refugee center. And we need to maintain our identity as a church. So they were just in this process of struggling with wanting to help our brothers, but also still being a church and focused on meeting everyone's spiritual needs. And so when I shared with them the idea, we call it like an advocacy model, the idea of one person at a church with a refugee and enabling that person, they were really excited about that idea. And leaving there, basically, yeah, we really think that we'll partner with you. And so that was coming back. I was so excited because now this dream of helping people had become so much more clear. And this wasn't just about helping people. This was about like enabling churches in Thailand to love refugees, because it was clear that churches in Thailand had this burden to help their brothers, and we had a process and ability to really enable that. And so it was coming back from that I realized that this was something that I was willing to devote my life to. So I got back to America, I was really excited, I was talking with the church, and then at some point I got a phone call and they're like, listen, like, you're great, we love your model, so we're just going to do it on our own. We don't really need you, you keep doing you, but we're just going to do this on our own, and but thanks for the idea. So I was kind of like, good, this is good. And there's still hope, and it's like, well, this, at the minimum, this is, I do believe like this is going to help the church, like shifting to this model is going to help the church love refugees better. But in the meantime, during my meetings in Thailand, the last day I had gone there, I basically invited 5 or 6 strangers to meet a refugee family I'd gotten to know while I was there. And one of them got back in touch with me, and she was basically kind of a wandering missionary in Thailand she knew God had called her to come to Thailand, but she didn't really know why. And she was there looking for what God was really calling her to do. And she had gotten to know this family, and she was getting to know more families, and she got back in touch with me, and she's like, I don't really know what you do as an organization, but you introduced me to this family, and like they need help. Like, what can you do? Like, how can we help? And so I was like, hey, like, let's help you. And so she ended up helping more families and actually leading our work in Bangkok. And she started developing. She was continuing that relationship with the ECB is the church that we were in conversations with. So she continued those relationships, and she and I ended up getting married a year after we talked on Skype. And 2 years after that, we went back and shared with the church kind of about our program. And at that point, they said, "We want to partner with you now. Like, you got like this. It's better if we let you handle this." And so we started that 2 years ago. And then last year, when we moved back to Thailand, one of the first meetings I had was with the pastor, and he said, like, because we partner with you, it's less work for us, and we're able to help more refugees. And that church is actually now our largest donor to our work. And more than 30 members from that church are helping about 40 different refugee families. And so going back, one of the things that I was most excited about and most burdened by was to be able to visit the IDC, because that is sort of the center of injustice to me. And so it's a situation where even being able to visit means that family members, just by me visiting, means that a mother or a husband and a wife can see each other, that a husband can see his kids, that they have food, that they have water. And so I was excited just to be able to go back, and that was something I was especially excited to do because that had been, the IDC is what our partners, like our team in the US said, like that is where the injustice is. Like through you, we want to make a difference there. And so I went back knowing that this was an area we wanted to grow in and really seek like what was the best way that we could help there, but I didn't know exactly how besides starting by visiting. And one of the first times that I visited, I visited a refugee named, I'll call him Shaz, and his mother, who was in her 70s or 80s, and so we were able to bring them together, and I talked to Shaz, and I'm keeping in mind, I'm talking to someone who probably, if he's lucky, gets 2 bowls of rice a day, is drinking dirty water, is in real danger of contracting tuberculosis, of dealing with really awful skin diseases, is in danger of contracting hepatitis. Like it's a horrible place. But he says, listen, he's talking to me, and he says, like, I'm okay. Like, thank you for visiting me. Like, this really helps. But if there's anything you can do to help my family, he says, I have a wife and 3 daughters outside, and my wife has, been dependent on me her whole life, and has relied on me and leaned on me, and now she's alone and incredibly vulnerable. And so that was something that really hit me deep. And as we talked with our partners in the US, that was something that was that was just heavy on their heart too. It's like, how can we help in this area? And so we prayed about it a lot, and talked to refugees and really sought the Lord, his vision here. And we ended up developing a program where we pay for women whose husbands are in the IDC, we pay them to make food for their husbands. And we're able to bring that inside not only to their husbands, but also to other refugees who are hungry. And so this last, just before I left here, I was the first time I did it, I said, hey, Shabazz, what is your favorite food? He said, chicken biryani. And so I was like, okay. So I had his wife make these bags of chicken biryani, so we were able to bring it to him and his mother. And so it was awesome not only to be feeding good food to someone who's hungry and in prison, but also with that money, that's enough for rent and more for his wife. And it's easy to hear these stories, to hear the story, and it almost kind of look at me as the hero, wow, this is awesome what you're doing. But this is something that you are doing. You, as individuals, as a church, are enabling us to carry out this ministry. And so it's important for you to know that you are giving Jesus something to eat. You are clothing Jesus. You are feeding Jesus. You're visiting Jesus in prison. And really, you all are heroes to me. So thank you all for partnering with us, and it's a blessing to be here.
Thanks, Chris.